Welcome to the 4th SAO Online Wikia podcast, where we'll be talking about the first half of the Floor 7 story, SAO Online Progressive Volume 7, Rhapsody of the Red Blaze. As usual, welcome to my channel, I'll be your host, and Gsimenas, the Wikia Overlord and fan translator extraordinaire, is right here as our regular guest for the summary. Hi there, Gsimenas senpai.
Yo!
Now, as you can imagine from that short introduction and the topic, this podcast will be dedicated to a Progressive Volume 7 summary, so it's fair to say it should be pretty obvious that it will feature spoilers, and no, you do not need to ask when the English translation by Yampress is coming. The answer is, we simply don't know until Yampress announces it, so go ask them. Their community manager is quite the cool person, though I doubt they'll announce a license they likely do not have yet, because you asked. Again, we are continuing with pre-recorded podcasts because I learned Adobe software actually has a handy feature where I'm automatically able to trim out awkward silences. That's gonna help a lot when you don't laugh to my amazing jokes. And I do enjoy playing around with the feature, so hopefully we will eventually switch to a live format one day. All you gotta do is subscribe, hit the like button, and make comments about how great the podcast is to impress our overlord Gsimenas. Timestamps will be in the description or accessible on your video player as chapters, so you can just jump around the topics if you want to. With all of that out of the way, Gsimenas, what is Rhapsody of the Red Blaze, and why can't Reki just finish stories in a single book as he should?
Because as usual, he kind of has a plot outline of where he wants to go, but he doesn't have the whole journey in mind all up front. So he just writes as he goes, and then he realizes that, okay, this is turning out to be much longer than I expected. In this case, he apparently had too much fun writing about Asuna and Kirito just having fun together, and that spiraled so much that he had to ask Miki for a second book just to fit everything in.
So that's the usual Reki, I guess.
Typical, yes.
What is Rhapsody of the Red Blaze? You didn't answer that one.
Well, I'm not really sure what to say about it. Not sure how the name plays into the story yet.
Oh, so the link is not exactly clear as of the first half of the story.
Not really, unless the Red Blaze is referring to gambling or something, because otherwise I don't really know what it's supposed to imply here.
I see. We still need that second book, which is coming in summer. Was it June? I guess June was confirmed by Dengeki, yeah.
So around June 10 or 9, like their usual releases.
Yep. So then moving on to the cover, we can see Asuna in the front, Argo right nearby, whereas Kirito is far in the back, which kinda reminds me of the Arioba Starless Night key visual too, where Kirito is taking the backdrop because Asuna is the main perspective of the movie. Is that the case with Progressive 7 as well?
Nope. It's entirely from Kirito's perspective.
So pretty much going back to the usual.
Yeah, the usual. Not sure why Asuna is given so much screen time on the cover when Kirito's still the main and Asuna's just there with him.
I see. And Argo? I assume we're getting more screen time for Argo.
Yes, she drives the plot forward in this book, but she doesn't appear in all the bits of it.
I see. So she has more relevance to the plot, but less appearances than usual.
No, I'd say that she has more appearances because she's relevant for the whole casino plot of this book.
Speaking of the casino plot, how about we go over to the map and have an overview, because that's the best way we can get a sense of the general direction of the story.
So basically, we only see the eastern half of the floor on the map in this volume because only the eastern half was relevant to the story so far. The western half has the boss, labyrinth, and the final town, but those haven't been reached yet, so it's still hidden on the map because no point in showing it so far.
I see.
On the east half of the map we have the main town Lexio, but despite being the main town of the floor, it's not actually important to all the players because the main attraction is the town on the southern end of the floor called Volupta, because it has the main attraction of the floor, the casino and battle arenas.
And the beach, perhaps?
Yes, it also has the beach, but the beach is restricted for casino VIPs only. You have to be a big winner. You can't even buy your way in because it's not the amount of money you have, but how much you earn in the casino that matters. Anyway, going back to Lexio, we can see that there's two roads coming out of it. One goes to the north and one goes to the south. The story is that if you come to the gate of the town, you'll see that there's basically two statues there. One showing a rich guy having a feast and another guy going through hurdles. It's basically implying that if you are going to the south, you'll have an easy road to get to the next town, and you'll find the casino there, while the northern road avoids the whole gambling thing, but that road will lead you through monsters and so on until you reach the western half of the floor.
And it's a huge mountainous region from what I can see, after a long forest road.
So the story begins in the town of Lexio, where Kirito and Asuna go eat some Thai food, and when then arrive at the gate, Kirito tells Asuna about the whole thing with the two roads, and Asuna immediately says, let's go north, because she knows where, especially when Kirito says things like, I lost everything back in the beta.
In the casino.
Yep, we're gonna go north. So Kirito still doesn't want to let the whole casino thing go, so he decides to tempt Asuna with something she would be more willing to go with, the beach.
And does she actually accept?
Reluctantly, she agrees to go to the beach because Kirito persuades her that they don't have to spend their money, they just need to invest it, make some earnings, and they can just get their money back.
Ah, right, indeed. Isn't that the sunk cost fallacy? Trying to earn the money back?
Well, he's not earning it back. He just needs to earn enough money to get the VIP permit.
I see.
To visit the beach.
There are two more attractions I see on the map. One of which is much less present than the other. Right on top of the main map, it seems like we have some stairs going down. Is that where the floor 6 comes up to floor 7? I imagine it does, because that's what the text says.
That's what it says on the map, but it's not relevant to the story at all, because the story starts off at the teleport gate in town it's proper.
I see, so that's just context for the map and nothing else.
Yeah, it's not relevant at all. It's not even brought up.
And in the middle, we have a large tree of some sorts in the middle of a lake.
It's actually one large forest swamp, like a whole different world, because the trees basically block off the whole swamp from the rest of the floor. You can only enter it from 4 areas which are marked with the stone steps.
I see.
And that's where the Dark Elven base of the floor is. While for those interested, the Forest Elf base is somewhere in the mountains, but it's just mentioned in passing, not relevant actually.
I see.
And the tree at the middle is the Halin Arboreal Palace. That's the Dark Elven base proper.
Like, when you say proper, for the floor or for general?
Well, the Dark Elven base of this floor specifically.
Okay.
Because each floor has its own base.
Right. We still need to have a proper castle and stuff in future floors, if I remember correctly.
That's floor 9, where the queen lives.
I guess that's all from the map, at least for this half of the story.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
So, that means we can start with the illustrations. We seem to be getting a nice little battle event here with the large bug and stuff, which is usually far in between in Progressive, it's more about the actual day-to-day stuff or strategizing for actual fights than actually going into actual fights. Any differences in this book?
In this specific instance, they just encountered a monster along the way and strategized how to beat it. It's a Verdian Lancer Beetle. It basically has a spear-like nose that it charges with. So Kirito teaches Asuna that the whole way to beat it is to aim for its belly when it tries to go over you.
It's just a regular mob, right? Not even a named
just
monster
a regular
or anything.
monster that just pops up on the floor. But this specific monster dropped the first healing crystal that the two have ever seen in the proper game.
Right, because crystals are much more rare than potions, right?
Yeah, they begin to drop on floor 6, I think, but their drop rate increases with each floor by like 10 times, but that's still 0.1 or 0.1% drop rate for any monster on that floor. So there's not one specific monster that drops. It's just basically...
It's just a general potion-like drop from any MMORPG that you'd play.
Yeah, just in part of the drop pool in general.
Yep. Moving on, the second illustration... in the previous podcasts, well, only the United Ring 4 podcast, I guess, since that was our only summary so far, we had the chibi at the end. We just covered it, kind of glossing over, but here you specifically told me that the chibi illustration on the back cover fits here early on in the story, which means Argo is coming on quite early, I guess, right?
Yes, right when Kirito and Asuna arrive at the town of Volupta at the southern end of the floor, they notice that the two major guilds are cheering for something, and Kirito wants to find out what's the whole deal. Why are all the two main guilds in the south when he imagined they would go to the north, since they wouldn't be gambling? They're in a debt game. So he decides to ask Argo about it, and Argo invites him at a specific point of the town to meet up.
I see. And they are eating something?
Yeah, they are eating pot stews at this specific instance.
The two guilds you mentioned, they are still Lind and Kibao's guilds, right? Nothing changes there.
Yeah.
They're still going.
And they're both, actually, I'll say what they're doing later on. But basically, Kirito and Asuna meet up with Argo to ask about them, but they got so engrossed in eating that they forget all about it until after they leave the restaurant.
Nice.
So when they actually remember that they still haven't talked it over, they decide to head over to an inn.
Got it.
And rent one inn for the three of them.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
I was ready to move on a couple sentences ago. Just making sure. Next illustration, it features Asuna amazed by the view and looking at the sea, as big as a sea can actually be on Aincrad, of course. This is the south area, I imagine.
Yes, they just arrived at their inn, and Asuna was amazed by the view, so she rushed over to the window to get a closer look, while Kirito unconsciously ends up staring at her. Meanwhile, Argo, to his right, starts grinning at him.
Of course she does.
With a teasing smile.
I find it really funny that this floor has a nice beach, whereas Integral Factor, in their great wisdom, decided to change the entire floor 8 into an ice area. Integral Factor, what are we gonna do with ya?
So, while this is technically not the ocean, it is actually a saltwater spot. So Argo and Asuna assume that this part of the floor came from, basically, the ground that was the basis for this floor came from an ocean side. So they actually did take a part of the ocean for the floor. Just that it ended up so small that it's more like a lake than an ocean in this case.
I mean, you can only be so large on the corner of a single floor in Aincrad.
So after the whole gazing out the window thing, they actually do go over what Kiban and Lind are doing on the floor, and the two learn that the two guilds are hooked on gambling, which Kirito finds surprising. Even more surprising is that they're actually winning, and quite a lot.
Is that actually supposed to be surprising?
Well, in the beta test, basically all beta testers that took part in the casino lost all their stuff, and some even dropped out of the game because of the casino. So Kirito wasn't expecting the two gamblers to risk losing their entire stuff right in the middle of a death game.
That would be bad, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so Kiba and Lind are hooked on the monster arena for some reason, as of yet unknown for the gang. Meanwhile, Argo requests their help with her quest at the casino. Basically, she needs just some extra eyes on the job. And
there, you mean Kirito and Asuna, right?
Yeah, it is. And in exchange, she offers intel on some flour that makes cool drinks. Because this floor, the shtick of this floor is that it's a floor of everlasting summer, and it's really hot out.
Even in the northern mountain region.
Yeah, the entire floor is basically in the middle of summer. All year round.
I would hate to be on that floor
when it's snowing, so
I just hate summer. Give me winter floors, please. Moving on to the next one, we got our first colored illustration, and appears to be our tradition of getting at least one awkward bedtime scene with Kirito, but instead of our favorite elf being the tease, it appears to be our favorite rat with our smug attitude. Is this our awkward bed scene?
No, this isn't the awkward bed scene. It's actually a post-bath scene. After the whole conversation, Kirito went to take a bath in a few seconds, and then he let the girls bathe for like 30 minutes. During the time, Kirito even managed to level up his meditation skill. And when the girls came out of the bath, Kirito ended up staring at Argo because he was unused to seeing her dressed like this. And Argo decided to tease him by saying, "Like what you're looking at? Are you falling for big sis here?" "No, I'm not."
She always refers to herself as Onesan, right?
Yeah.
And that never comes off in the official translations, of course.
When she's... Well, usually she uses a pronoun for herself, but when she's teasing Kirito, she refers to her as Big Sis.
Yup. That's it, right?
Hold on. So the actual bed scene comes much later, because after this bathing scene, the whole crew decides to go to the casino for Argo's quest.
I see. So that's not even time to sleep yet.
No, it's actually the evening, but the monster arena has basically 2 time slots. One in the early morning and then another one in the evening.
I see.
And the quest has to do with the monster arena, so that's when they need to go for the quest.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that means we are moving over to the quest NPCs, right?
Well, we can move on to the next illustration because it's more relevant than the bath scene.
We know which one's gonna get more focus once it's adapted.
Sure do. So the whole point of the quest was that Argo had to investigate allegations of fraud at the monster arena battles. Basically, the NPC that hired her told her that one specific monster would commit some kind of fraud, and Argo's job was to find out what that fraud actually was. And since you needed to look through the battles and try to find something off about it, Argo basically needed hope that extra eyes on the job would help spot what was wrong with the whole thing.
I see. And these NPCs were one of the first teasers for Progressive 7, right? The little girl and the maid. We had their concept art revealed on a Reki Kawahara stream.
Yes, was revealed on Kawahara Reki stream and then also featured on some Dengeki stream for something else too.
Mm-hmm. Who are they exactly?
Basically, the little girl is the one that hired Argo to investigate the monster arena. Mm-hmm. And after watching the battle with one of the 2 monsters there, Kirito noticed that one of the monsters was died. Well, when it crashed into a wall, it left some kind of stain that looked like blood but turned out to be a dye. So in this colored illustration, Argo took Asuna and Kirito to the NPC at the casino's hotel on the upper floors to report their findings.
I see.
The maid is basically the little NPC's guard, while the little girl is one of the 2 managers of the casino.
One of the 2 managers. Do we get to know the other manager?
We get it mentioned, but he's basically the antagonist of the story, and he hasn't made his debut yet.
I see. So I guess that means
we can move on to the next illustration, the non-colored version.
Yep.
Where Nirrnir learns about what the scam was, and she had the maid pour in some wine for her, and after drinking it, she almost broke the glass because she had her misgivings confirmed that the other manager of the casino was cheating. Mm-hmm. That's where she explains the whole background for the casino, that once upon a time the casino town was founded by some kind of hero that beats some kind of dragon, and that hero had 2 children, but which one would inherit the whole town depended on basically that hero decided to settle who would be his inheritor through battle, but not direct battles, rather having the 2 sons compete in monster taming battles. They would each tame monsters and then have those monsters fight each other, and the one who won 3 out of 5 battles would become the one true lord of the town.
Basically dogfighting.
Oh, pretty much. But the 2 lords, after the hero's death, weren't very interested in going to the battle right now. They wanted to test if the whole concept could actually work that so well. So they had mock fights first. Those mock fights went a little bit crazy because the monsters escaped, but there were no casualties because they wrapped the whole thing up. And then the 2 sons noticed that the whole thing drew a big crowd and got everyone interested in gambling on side. So the 2 sons decided, do we really need to fight it out right now? Why not do it after we get some money out of this whole thing? And that's how the whole monster arena battles came into being, where each son would prepare one monster to fight their battles and organize the whole gambling thing themselves to reap in some of the benefits, the whole thing. And even after the sons died, they still hadn't had their whole duel in proper. And so the casino was founded and still managed by the descendants of the 2 sons, still not having gone through their duels, so they both managed the casino.
So the female NPC Nirrnir as well as the other owner, they're the descendants of one of the 2 boys?
Yeah, the antagonist, the other manager, is a part of the Colroy family that manages the casino, while Nirrnir is part of the Noctoy family, and she's basically the current head of the family, so she's the one managing their side of the monster battles.
I see.
Meanwhile, the other manager is an old man that used to be a nice guy, but lately he's becoming obsessed with expanding his lifespan. And for that reason, he needs money because he has some swords that can allegedly let him live longer in exchange for money. And that made him so greedy that he started cheating during his battles.
Because so that's where the corrupt casino takes place.
Yeah, because the winner of the battle gets 10% of the whole gambling fund. And Kirito also assumes that that guy also has his minions betting in the battles themselves to rig the fight so that he ends up winning some from the gambling as well.
I see. So
meanwhile,
corrupt on all fronts, it seems.
Yeah, meanwhile, Nirrnir is against the whole thing and he wants to expose the fraud, but for that she needs to show what the scam with the fights was. So she assigns Argo and Co on another quest to gather materials for basically a substance that would remove any dyes, because the monster that appeared in that night's fights would be appearing in tomorrow's fight as well. So it was assumingly be the same trick used and they could expose it to the whole world.
I see. Now that you mentioned monster taming, is it like actual taming? Is it a hint towards Shirika and Pina, would you say? It just occurred to me, so I'm asking.
Well, in this book it says that the two families have some kind of trick or something that or skill or something that they allows them to tame monsters. They don't have to actually find the monsters themselves. Instead, they hire some men to capture the monsters, and the lords of the two families only are needed to tame them once they're here.
So it is kind of a tease. Could be, at the very least.
Not sure, but that's basically the whole story for the casino.
I see. I know you don't like speculating about stuff, just getting that out there, because it sounded similar. Anyways, does that mean we can move on to the next one?
Oh, and I'll just mention that the new quest was to gather items from the forest in the middle of the floor and from a riverbed to the west. So Kirito decided to head out with Asuna to the Dark Elven forest because they have connections. And Nirrnir knows that because she saw their ring, while Argo would go to the riverbed to get the other ingredient.
I see.
So they would be splitting up but going out for the quest the next day. And I think that's about it for this illustration.
Okay, then we move on to the next one. And is that Liten?
Yes, that is Liten. Once they were leaving the casino, they accidentally encountered Liten, who was, well, her guild was also betting in the whole monster battles, but she couldn't bear to watch as they bet on the final fight, so she ran out to not actually see how it plays out, and she accidentally just comes across Kirito. But Kirito doesn't remember who she was. So Liten pointed to her name displayed below her cursor, and then, "Oh, Liten! Oh, I remember you." And then Asuna and Argo jabs about his poor memory, because he only now realized who she was.
I mean, she does have a different hairstyle, but come on, Kirito.
Kirito's excuse was that she always wore armor, so it was hard to remember what she looked without it.
Right. That sounds like just excuses.
You know Kirito well. So they head out for a little discussion where they learned that Bao and Lin got into gambling because when they approached that gate in the main town and were about to head out, they were approached by an NPC that offered a book guiding them to the casino and showing info on the whole monster battles and who to bet on, because such an NPC is totally not suspicious. So the guild decided to give it a try at first, betting a small sum of money, and who would have guessed? It actually turned out to be true. The monster that the book emphasized actually did win the first battle, so they invested even more money, because the grand prize of the casino is some very OP sword with special abilities that heal the user, and both guilds wanted that sword.
Of course.
So they did, but that sword is very expensive, so they basically had to gamble a lot in order to get it. So they bet an initial sum of money, like 10,000 crore or something. For one person, that's quite a lot of money. For a guild, that's, well, on the safe side. And then after winning one battle, they bet the entire sum and their new earnings onto the next fight, and so on until the last battle right now. If they won, they would have enough for the sword, but Kirito assumes that that's where the whole scam would show its face and the book would show the wrong winner.
I mean, that's pretty obvious, isn't it?
Yeah, it's obvious for some, like Kirito and some more sane members of the two guilds, but not the leadership itself, it seems. So
God damn it, Kibao.
And Lin, both of them actually. So that's why Liten couldn't bear to see what happens next and decided to run out of the whole arena in the basement, and that's where she met Argo and the others.
And do we know the result? I mean, we do know the result, of course, but do we get a confirmation of what the result is in the book?
Yes, it was confirmed like half an hour later that the two guilds lost all of their bet and money.
Was I too early asking this? Were you gonna mention it sometime later in the video?
No, that's where it pretty much comes in.
Okay,
Kirito and Asuna just go back to the inn. Argo stays behind to see the result, and half an hour later, she messages them that the two guilds lost. Because I assume that the book was authored by the Colroy guy that was trying to get a large sum of money, and he tricked the two guilds into believing his words through the book, as in he was showing them who would win. But at the very last battle, he told them to bet on the monster that would lose, as in Nirrnir's monster, and he would cheat to win that battle to both gain 10% of the whole betting pool and have his goons betting in the battle to also rake in the dough from the actual bets.
I should probably add a surprised Pikachu face right here when I edit this.
Yeah, very surprising.
Should I move on to the next illustration?
Yes, that's pretty much it for this casino part.
So next one. Okay, this has to be our awkward bedtime scene in this book then.
Yep, this is the one. So Kirito and Asuna and Argo return to the inn, and they're all sleeping when right about 2 a.m. Kirito is woken up by Asuna because she can't sleep, because she wants to see Kizmel right away, because she's worried about the whole thing about their keys being stolen and Kizmel being in trouble, and she wants to head out right in the middle of the night. But Kirito convinces her to at least sleep an hour before going out, because she hasn't slept a wink yet, and they're gonna go through an area where they haven't been yet, so it would be too dangerous to be very tired. And Asuna says, well, she can't sleep in her own bed, but gets into Kirito's bed. I can sleep here.
Okay, then.
And she does fall asleep. Meanwhile, Kirito, now I can't sleep.
I really like those expressions. Abek does a great job.
So, while Asuna slept like a baby for an hour and felt very rested, Kirito, on the other hand, didn't sleep a wink afterwards.
But that's it from this scene, I guess?
Yes, but the very next scene...
Should I move on to the next one?
Yeah, the colored illustration.
When Asuna is being attacked by some jellyfish monster, yep.
Yeah, that one.
And one would think they learned their lesson in the lake in the previous floor. You know, don't mess with the water, you don't know what's in there.
Well, the whole problem is that the shtick of this forest is that the roads leading to the Dark Elven palace are made of those stone pillars, but some of those stone pillars are very unstable. That's why it's called the Forest of Shaking Rocks.
So basically they're playing Fall Guys in that one specific map where the rock can collapse and put you down.
Yeah, so basically some of the stones are very stable and no problem, but some you have to step on right on the middle of the pillar or you will fall down into the water. Mm-hmm. Well, the water isn't deadly per se, it's just that very hard to navigate, and there's certain monsters in there that make it pain in the ass to go through. But since those monsters are slugs, Kirito decides not to go into details because he thought Asuna wouldn't be very pleased about that.
She doesn't look very pleased in the picture, that's for sure.
So they navigate the stone paths leading to the palace, and for a time they seem to have no trouble crossing even those shaky ones. But then there was an instance where there were two shaking stones right next to each other, And while Asuna managed to navigate the first one, she didn't notice that the next one was also shaky, so she wanted to make room for Kirito to pass on and accidentally slipped from the whole rocks into the water.
And it looks like Kirito doesn't want to go down to help?
No, he wanted to help by throwing in her some rope so she could climb her way back up, because if you fall into the water and don't have any rope to climb up, you'll have to go back to the start and do everything over from scratch.
Oh my god, I hate those kinds of paths.
But while Kirito's taking out his rope, he notices that Asuna is being attacked by one of those slugs that he chose not to talk in detail about. The slugs themselves are called hematolibe, or basically blood-sucking slugs, because melibe is some kind of sea slug. They're not dangerous alone, they just suck some blood and don't really deal much damage, but tell that to a girl being sucked by a slug. So while Kirito tells her not to do anything with it, just calm down while he drops her some rope. Eventually, when the slug starts sucking on her, she has added her enough and throws the slug into one of those stone pillars, upon which it dies. The problem is that while the slug itself on its own isn't dangerous because it's very easy to defeat, when it's killed, it leaves off some kind of goo that attracts more of them. Not one or two, but like 50 and more.
Oh my god, every single floor has multiple trap enemies like this.
The problem is that while the slugs themselves aren't dangerous per se, when they're agitated, they jump on you, and if too many of them jump on you, it becomes hard to stand because you become much heavier with all the slugs and then fall into the water. The water isn't very deep, but if you can't stand up from it, you can drown in the water.
So you can face plank and then not be able to breathe.
Yeah, pretty much. So Kirito decides to jump into the water himself because crew getting back up through the rope, we just need to get out of here right now, but they're too late and they get swarmed by 50 and more hematolibes and have to fight their way out.
Oh, when Progressive 7 is being adapted, Obara is definitely gonna be on the crew for this scene.
Possibly.
For those who don't know who Obara is, that's the guy who animated a lot of the controversial scenes that you have seen in the illustration anime. That's his specialty. Is that it from this scene? Should I move on to the next one?
No, move on to it just yet.
Okay.
Because there's no illustration in between, but I need to explain the context to understand what happens next. So
okay.
When they defeat the whole slugs, they go back to the start and finally reach the palace. The problem is that when they enter the palace, they get arrested by the Dark Elves for colluding with the Fallen Elves and stealing the keys. So they get thrown into Dark Elven prison in the basement of the palace.
I see. So that's the situation they're in after what happened on floor 6.
Yeah. Kizmel was also arrested somewhere, and Kirito and Asuna are worried about her. Then they notice that their quest log tells them to break out of prison and retrieve their stuff. So they come up with a plan because the entire place is made out of wood, they come up with a trick to burn the lock of the prison doors and make their escape there. And then they make their way into the armory to get their stuff back. And that's where the illustration comes in. You see, the armory is right next to the prison guard booth where there are guards. So Kirito and Asuna are retrieving their stuff, they found their swords, and then they notice that there's also Kizmel's weapons in there. So they decide to pick up her rapier and Kirito's sword that he gave her, but while picking up those two swords, he accidentally pushes one of the swords next to them to fall, and his hands are already full, so he can't stop that sword from falling. So Asuna steps in to help, but the rapier that is falling, it proves to be very heavy, and Asuna basically loses her balance and shifts forward, so Kirito has to support her with his hand so that they wouldn't cause a noise that would attract the guards.
Except you didn't tell me to move over to the next illustration.
Well, I told you that this is where the next illustration would become relevant.
Oh, there you go, that's the next illustration. Tell me when you say stop, don't move on, and then you need me to move on. I had zero context, and I only realized when you mentioned Kirito grabbing Asuna.
Well, I said that's where the next illustration comes relevant, so I gave you even a break to move over to the next illustration.
Fine, Fine, you win. Fine. Do I move over to the next illustration now?
Alright, move on to the next one.
Are you sure?
Yes, because you'll forget about it again.
Okay, moved on. There we go, we got Kizmel. Kizmel's back. What's the situation with the L4 campaign at this point? You kinda hinted back on it after what happened on floor 6, you know, they lost all the keys to Kisara. I believe that was her name. I am still not exactly sure how the fallen elf names are supposed to be pronounced. They are a huge mess in my opinion. But yeah.
So I'll get to Kizmel in a bit. Basically, after getting their weapons back, they tried to find Kizmel in the prison, but the whole prison was empty except for one cell where they found the guy in the upper right corner of this illustration called Lavik. This guy has been in the Dark Elven prison for like 30 years, and he's the only prisoner on that the basement prison has had in 30 years. The two are trying to find Kizmel, so they try to ignore the guy at first, but he senses their presence and threatens them that if they don't answer his questions, he would summon the guards. So they have to comply and answer who they are and what they're after. And they learn from him that Kizmel is probably in the upper floors where the priests have their own prison.
So what's the thing with this guy?
Well, apparently, through further conversation, they find out that he's the brother of the Black Elven blacksmith back on floor 3 that forged Asuna's rapier. So when Asuna shows him the rapier and he finds out that his brother turned out to have grown out of his not lackluster phase of being a klutz at his job to forging very great weapons, Lavik decides to help them find their Kizmel, and he asks to bring him a rapier from the armory, and that rapier was the one that Kirito and Asuna had to stop from falling, and eventually decided to store in their inventory because it looked like one that Kizmel could use.
I do remember that floor 3 blacksmith. He was kind of a dickhead as well.
So they break out this guy. Actually, he breaks himself out with the rapier using some high-level sword skill that doesn't make much of a sound as he cuts the door open. And then they rush first they go after the guards to gather more intel, and then they go all the way up to find Kizmel in the prison. The problem is that this whole thing gets glossed over in the flashback because the next part starts over with the whole gang escaping the palace by roping their way out from the top floor.
I like how you completely ignore the one small thing I mentioned and just move on as if nothing happened. Luckily, I have the magic of the trimming tool at my hand, so there won't be an awkward silence. Does that mean I am moving on to the next illustration?
No, not yet. This illustration comes in right about here, where after they have escaped the whole forest and Lavik talks to Kizmel. Basically, they talk about Dark Elves and how they can't beat Kisara on their own, but the whole key to their victory would be to cooperate with other races. And then he just says that you know the answer already, and then just takes his leave.
The other races? So that would be the forest elves?
Humans and so on.
Oh, humans, he means.
As in, elves don't usually see themselves as superior to all the other races, so they don't really communicate with anyone else. And that's why they can't beat Kisara, because she's cursed after trying to chop down some holy tree.
Right.
So that's where Lavik takes his leave, and Kizmel and the others discuss their plans. Kizmel was reluctant to leave the prison because, she cared about her honor, but Lavik convinced her that if she wanted to prove her innocence, she would have to break out and find the keys to prove her innocence.
I see.
So the whole plan they came up with next, that there would be other Dark Elven knights coming in to find the key on this floor. And Kirito proposed that if you want to prove Kizmel's innocence, we have to get old keys back. So why don't we let the new Dark Elven knights find this key of this floor, and then expect that they get ambushed by the fallen elves too. Then we jump in to go after the fallen elves and trail them to their base, where we can retrieve the old keys.
Right.
But since that whole thing would take place the following day, since it would take time for the new Dark Elves to arrive, they decide to invite Kizmel back to town for the casino quests, because they have to turn in that one because it's a time quest. So the whole gang then meets up with Argo doing her stuff, and then they go back with Argo to the town and meet up with Nirrnir.
And that's gonna be the next illustration, I imagine.
Yeah.
Okay. I wonder how many times in this entire Dark Elf quest line did Kirito mention how did the story change so much and still function? What an interesting thing. Someone who wouldn't know about cardinal system, that this is all so much bullshit going on in terms of game mechanics without that background.
Yeah.
But yeah, moving over to the next illustration. Go ahead. Someone is pulling a prank here, I imagine.
Well, basically, before leaving that Dark Elven forest, they got the item that Nirrnir requested for the whole dye removal solution. That thing was a fruit that, well, it tasted pretty decently, but the problem is that it is an electric fruit. As in, if you come in contact with the juices, you get a jolt out of it. Mm-hmm. Some people like Lavik enjoy that jolt, but even Kizmel wasn't very fond of the idea of eating it, so only Kirito had a taste of it and found out about the jolt. But then he forgot about it, the whole thing, and when Nirrnir asked him to squash the fruit for the juices, he only remembered about the jolt part right when he got jolted.
Typical Kirito. By the way, is Kizmel still with them?
Yeah, she was brought over to Nirrnir, and she even announced that she was a Dark Elf. While the Nirrnir's family and Dark Elves haven't actually been seeing eye to eye because Nirrnir's family was hunting the floor for monsters to tame, including the Dark Elven forest. Mm-hmm. But since Kizmel was being nice and wasn't one to go for assassinations, Nirrnir didn't make a big deal out of it.
I see.
The maid was suspicious and even ready for combat because of that whole feud thing, but Nirrnir was the more mature one and didn't make a big deal out of it.
Right, the mature one who pulled a nice prank on Kirito.
The prank that even the maid enjoyed and tried to look away to not show that she's laughing.
But this is the final illustration, right?
Yeah, that's the final one. This is pretty much where the story takes a break, with the girls going out to take a bath and Kirito going back to the casino and learning that the girls are going back to gambling again. Mm-hmm. Apparently that NPC that told them about the whole bets could be now found at the casino approaching players who were betting. And since they still want that sword because it was OP, they decided to brave the risks and try to bet again.
Mm-hmm. Does the book not end with a cliffhanger at all? That's kind of a weird choice to make, no?
Well, it's not actually where the exact spot where it ends, because after parting with one of the guild members that he learned about the NPC from, Kirito has the idea to investigate the casino's backyard where Nirrnir mentioned that there had a stable. He wanted to basically have a look in case Colroy had some other aces up his sleeve. Mm-hmm. So he crosses over the wall and heads over to investigate, and then has a passing idea about, this totally doesn't sound like a PK plot or anything to do with fallen elves. No, that must be my imagination.
Is that where it ends, or do we get a confirmation about the fallen elves?
That's where it ends, with Kirito having a passing thought about the PKers and stuff.
That's not a powerful cliffhanger. God damn it, Reki. But yeah, since that's where it ends, I guess we have some possible questions that people would ask, or rather I would ask, because we are still not taking questions yet. But yeah, I got 4 of them right here. First off, which was something we even talked about when the synopsis was revealed about the corrupt casino. Do you feel like there's a place where PoH can be, or PoH, if we're taking the Japanese pronunciation, can be involved in any way of the story, or any mentions of Laughing Coffin or the PK players?
Well, as I said, the only reference to them was at the very end, where Kirito has a passing thought that this kind of sounds like some kind of plot that could be related to the whole thing, but he tries to dismiss this thing. But I assume that PoH is working with the fallen elves, because we've already had
on the previous floors with the poisonous sticks,
where we learned that they're following the fallen elf route of the campaign and getting rewards. So I assume that, the business partner that Colroy is expecting to get the solution for eternal life from to be the fallen elves. Mm-hmm. Because back in the prison, they heard the guards talking about how basically they were disparaging Kirito and Asuna as being swayed by talks of expanding their lifespan by working with the fallen elves.
I see.
Kirito didn't pay much attention to this conversation, but this is clearly Kawahara hinting where this is going, as in the fallen elves are behind the whole casino business, and I assume that PoH is involved as in the mastermind of the whole thing. As in PoH's either working with the fallen elves, or he's even the one who proposed the idea of persuading the casino into working with them.
I see. And then Cardinal is just doing its magic and creating a quest line out of it. Good job, Cardinal.
And so I'm not sure what PoH's goal exactly is. Is it to strip the clearers of their funds to impede their process, or is it something more sinister, some kind of trap that we haven't been told of yet?
I mean, there's still the idea that if the Fallen Elves win, doesn't Aincrad... something happen to Aincrad, or the Dark Elves win, it's supposed to return to as it was. It's still a mystery as to what would happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, moving over to the next question. Mito was quite the spectacle in the second Aria of a Starless Night movie trailer. Since she's an anime original character, do you feel like she could be implemented, I want to say, but at this point it will be more like shoehorned into future progressive light novels at all, whether the next one or sometime into the future, you know? We're 4 volumes into the United Ring light novels, and we're still expecting Eiji to be added somewhere, aside from some meaningless mentions of Yuna and Ogma here and there.
Well, I'm sure that she's not gonna be thrown into this casino plot, because this sounds more like something that PoH would be responsible for. But I wouldn't rule out her appearing in some future plot. We're not really sure what's going to happen with Mito so far, because she's an anime original character.
Right. We don't even know what her allegiance is in general, or her attitude, etc., personality. Maybe I should ask this after we get the movie. So I'm moving over to the next question then. What can we expect in the second half of the story? Progressive Volume 8 is coming in June 2021. Are we gonna get a continuation of the casino campaign? Obviously we will have to, but, you know, are we gonna get more focus on the Elf War campaign? Kizmel is on the run. What was his name? Lavik has his own plans?
Lavik basically moved to the mountainous area, and I don't think he's gonna be relevant anymore. We do get a revelation that he's basically the chief of one of the paladins of the Dark Elves, or the former chief of one of the paladin groups, but he was arrested for unknown reason.
Well, he has to come back for that reveal.
I don't expect him to be relevant to the plot anymore, but he will probably be relevant to some future plot point, I assume.
I see. And you said he went to the mountainous region? That was where the Fallen Elves were, right?
No, that was where the Forest Elves.
Oh, Forest Elves, okay.
We're not sure where the Fallen Elves are, that's why Kirito decided to use the upcoming Dark Elven party coming to grab the key as bait for the Fallen Elves to track down their base. Right.
And the final question I would ask is, what is exactly the theme of the floor in the sense of the floor boss itself? Was it ever mentioned what it was in the beta? Not that beta info matters, or any kind of hints throughout the story?
No significant changes to the floor from the beta. It's basically the same floor. Not sure what the exact theme of the floor is, because the main point of the floor is the casino in the south, but the rest of the floor doesn't seem to have some kind of unifying theme or something, except for the fact that it's a floor of eternal summer.
I see. But you said it didn't change much, if any at all, from the beta.
There were some changes to the casino, as in the sword coming up as the grand prize. That wasn't the case in the beta. The changes to the pricings of the casino prizes and so on.
So aside from the sword, it's just basic stuff. I imagine someone will earn the sword eventually in the second half. That's too much of a tease to not happen.
I assume, but it would be strange for Kirito to get it, because in volume 10 of the main series, he mentioned his famous swords, and he didn't even mention the sword of the casino.
Right.
So I'm not sure if he's the one who's going to get it, to be honest.
And we still do have the west side of the entire map that's unrevealed.
The west side is where the the key of this floor is hidden, so that's why it's not shown yet. And there's also the final town before the labyrinth and the labyrinth itself. But since the guilds are too busy with the casinos so far, no one has reached the western half of the floor yet.
I see. So there can still be some changes over there, or some changes to the boss, since we heard absolutely nothing.
We have no mentions of the boss so far, because this wasn't relevant for the whole casinos, plots, conspiracies, and so on going on.
Right. But yeah, I guess if you don't have anything to add, that is all we have, right?
Yeah, I think that's about it.
Alright then. I would like to thank you all for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed this lengthy summary, and please do make sure to like, subscribe, and comment as to how much you like this, so we'll eventually, I'll keep saying eventually, turn into a live stream format and, you know, take your questions and stuff as we do this stuff. Aside from that, I think that would be it. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time, I guess in June, when Progressive 8 comes out. And until then, stay cool.
Keep your cool.